This is an overview of a presentation given by the National Dalit Christian Watch, and it's about a system of social hierarchy that, even though it was officially outlawed decades ago, continues to cause deep, violent, and very real harm. To really get what this means, we have to start with the people living it every day. To understand this, we have to talk about the human cost. Think about a student named Rohit Vela. Back in 2016, his suicide at a top university became this huge national moment. It pulled back the curtain on the crushing pressure and systemic exclusion that students from the Dalit community face. Then there's the story of Sagar Shez, a 24-year-old nursing student, and his supposed crime. His phone had a ringtone, a song paying tribute to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a celebrated Dalit icon. A group of men heard it, got offended, beat him, and then ran him over with a motorbike. All for a ringtone. And you know, it isn't just about this horrifying violence. Imagine it's your wedding day. You're a groom in Gujarat and your entire village is threatening you. Why? Because you decided to ride a horse to your own wedding. An act that some people still see as a privilege only for the upper castes. Look, these aren't just a few isolated tragedies. They're not just random acts of cruelty. They are all symptoms of a deeply, deeply entrenched system. So let's break down how this injustice, even though it's technically illegal, remains such a powerful and destructive force in modern India. Okay, so to really understand how we got here, we've got to look at the foundations of the system itself. What exactly is caste? Where does it come from? Well, funny enough, the word itself actually comes from the Portuguese word casta, which means race or pure breed. And that kind of gets right to the point, doesn't it? It's a system designed from the ground up to divide people into these rigid, unequal groups. And right away we have to make this crucial distinction between the theory and the reality. On one hand, you have Varna, the four big theoretical categories you might read about in ancient texts. But the lived on-the-ground reality for people is Jati. That literally means birth. There are thousands of specific hereditary communities that actually dictate your life, and it really boils down to three kinds of inescapable rules. First, it's hereditary. You are born into your caste, full stop. It shapes your whole life. Second, it's endogamous, which means marriage is strictly controlled and kept within the same caste. And third, it's a brutal hierarchy built on these ideas of purity and pollution, which shoves groups like the Dalits to the very, very bottom. So how did this get so baked into the system? Well, looking at a quick timeline, while its ancient origins are debated, a huge turning point was British colonial rule. They didn't just observe the caste system, they actually made it more rigid, because it made the population easier to categorize and control. And all of that led up to this monumental step in 1950, when India's new constitution officially banned untouchability and all caste-based discrimination, a legal end to the system. Or at least, that was the idea. And that brings us right back to the heart of the matter, to the central paradox of this whole story. The law says caste discrimination is over, but for millions of people, the lived reality is something else entirely. It is still a very tangible and very powerful force. I want you to just let this number sink in for a second. According to the source data, a crime is committed against a person from the Dalit community every 18 minutes. Every 18 minutes. That's nearly 80 atrocities every single day. This isn't history we're talking about. This is right now. And this isn't some abstract discrimination. It plays out in the most basic, gut-wrenching ways. We're talking about being denied water from a village well, being told you can't walk on a public street, social boycott, segregated housing that pushes Dalit families to the very edge of town. It can even dictate your job, forcing people into work like manual scavenging, a practice that's been banned for decades, but still happens. The segregation is so absolute it follows you literally to your grave, with separate burial grounds. And if you're thinking, well, maybe this is slowly getting better, the data tells a very different story. In fact, it's getting worse. Registered hate speech incidents shot up by 74% in just 1 year. The climate is getting more hostile, not less. This inequality isn't just social, it is deeply, deeply economic. Just look at these numbers on land ownership. Upper castes make up about 15 to 20% of the population, but they control a staggering 80 to 90% of the land. Meanwhile, Dalit and Adivasis or tribal communities are left disproportionately landless, often trapped as labourers on land they can never dream of owning. Okay, so now the source material really narrows its focus on a particularly complex and frankly painful issue. The paradox that Dalit Christians are trapped in. So this leads to a really devastating question. The Constitution provides protections for what are called scheduled castes. But what happens if somebody from that community decides to convert to a different faith, like Christianity? Does the social discrimination they face their whole life just magically go away? And here's the catch. It's a brutal one. According to the law, if a Dalit converts to Christianity or Islam, they are legally stripped of their scheduled caste status. So let's be clear, the social abuse, the discrimination, that doesn't stop. But the legal protection, the affirmative action programs, things like reservations in schools and jobs designed to help, it's gone. And this creates a profound crisis, not just for people, but for institutions like the church. The source asks some really tough questions like, how do you even advocate for justice in a system like that? What does it mean to be a member of a church when the state denies rights to your members because of their faith? And maybe the toughest one, how on earth do you support someone facing an impossible choice between professing their faith and losing vital protections? So after all this, you have to ask, is there any way out of it? Is there a path forward? The source argues yes, there is, and it doesn't just point out the problem. It actually proposes some concrete solutions. The path to change involves 4 key steps. First, get the real data from a comprehensive caste census, because you can't fix a problem you can't accurately measure. Secondly, actually enforce the anti-atrocity laws that are already on the books but are so often ignored. Third, you have to actively promote interaction between castes, especially in schools and workplaces, to start breaking down those social walls and finally have a real, sustained public conversation to confront the prejudices that are at the very heart of this. Because at the end of the day, the source argues something really important. Just knowing about this, just feeling sympathy, it isn't enough. The real call to action is to move beyond just feeling bad about it and towards an active response. And that really leaves us with this powerful quote from Desmond Tutu. It forces us to ask a provocative question. In the face of an injustice this deep and this persistent, is it even possible to be neutral? Or does saying nothing mean you've already chosen a side? The National Dalit Christian Watch needs money to continue its excellent work in redressing these imbalances and fighting these injustices. If you'd like to make a donation, here are the details on the screen. Thank you for listening.